See, I travel with my own technical staff. I'll come up here to the nosebleed seats. It's funny because when I got the call that I was going to be going to New York last week, I had was waiting to talk to Reverend Farmer, and I actually had the thought in my head that I was going to tell him, I don't know if this is going to work because I'm going to be in New York and it's just, I'm going to be traveling up there and then have to turn right back around to come back here. And so I had this all planned out in my head. So then when he called, I actually left a message, so I called him back. And I opened my mouth and started telling him the story. What came out was, and I'll be back on Saturday so that I can speak on Sunday. And there was something in my head that said, wait a minute, that's not what we agreed to. But I am here. I'm here and I'm glad to be here. When Reverend Farmer asked me to be one of the founding trustees, we both knew that there was going to be something in this for me as well. And I felt for a long time that a part of that was going to be me speaking here. And I guess today is the day. And it actually goes right in line with what I'm going to be talking about today. Because when I met Reverend Farmer, I guess it was back 2005 or 6, I was becoming more acquainted with what my calling was, what my life was going to unfold as. And it was brand new, and yet it was at the same time very old, because I'd been in the position of being a minister, being a counselor, being a teacher for much of my life, with youth groups and in church and things. And I'd left that for a while, but in my heart, I knew that I was going to be back there again one day. So I realized around that time that a part of my calling was to help people to connect with the truth within themselves, the truth that will set them free. That's one of the reasons I accepted being a trustee here, because that is a part of the mission here, helping people find the truth within themselves. But to do that, I had to find the truth within myself, the truth that would set me free. And it's often for people who are standing up and teaching, we teach what we learn, and we learn as we teach. And this whole topic, that your purpose is the pathway to God's provision, is a lesson that I've been learning lately. And when I say lately, I say within the last couple of months. I got a crash course, I guess you say, in that. Because I realized a few years ago that in order for me to step fully into my calling, that I was going to need to leave my job. And at that time, I was working as an IT professional in a law firm. It was a pretty nice job, paid the bills, and provided a little bit of extra for me to do some things. And so that was great. And it was always scary for me to think about stepping away from that and not knowing where that provision was going to come from. And so for the last 2 years at least, I just kind of battled with that. In my head, I was wondering, well, God, if I do this, if I step out as a teacher, if I step out as a counselor, if I step out as a coach, as a speaker, where's the money going to come from? And all I knew is that I needed to trust. That was the answer that kept coming. That I should trust. And one of the things that Jesus teaches us is that we should seek first the kingdom. So that's what I did. I started to get an understanding of God. I wanted to know who God was, because if I was going to trust God, if you're going to trust anyone, you've got to know who that person is. So I said, I need to work on my relationship with God and figure out who God is. And in the process of that, I figured out who I was. And then near the end of September, I was listening to one of the teachers that I listened to, David Nagel, and he was speaking about his journey. And when he said the words, I knew that he was speaking right to me. He said that when it was time for him, when he was ready to step into that next level of life, he had to leave everything else behind. So he left his job, and he said, you know what, I'm just going to trust, I'm going to believe that everything will work out for me. So I did that, and when I put in my notice in September of this year, I had no clients. All I had was the money that I had in the bank, not much savings, not much of anything, but I said, you know what, God, I'm going to trust. And as I trusted, because now I had gotten an opportunity to know God, something came to me. I was reading this book called The Infinite Way, and in one of the chapters on supply, he says this: since money is not supply, what is? Let us digress for a moment and look at the orange tree, which is laden with fruit. We know that the oranges do not constitute supply because when these have been eaten or sold or given away, a new crop starts to grow at once. The oranges are gone, but the supply remains, because within that tree there is a law in operation. Call it the law of God or a law of nature. The name of the law is not too important, but the recognition of the presence of a law operating in, through, or as the tree is important. That law operates to draw in through the roots, the minerals, substances, elements of air, water, and sunshine, which it then transforms into sap that is drawn up through the trunk of the tree and distributed through the branches and finally sent into expression as blossoms. In due time, this law transforms the blossoms into a green marble, and this becomes a full-grown orange. The orange is the result or effect of the operation of the law acting in, through, and as the orange tree. As long as this law is present, we will have oranges. The orange of itself cannot produce another orange. Thus we understand that the law of supply and oranges are that there is a law of supply and oranges are the fruit and the results or the effects of the law. And when I read that, it dawned on me that my gift, my calling, my ministry was my fruit. And that as I allowed that fruit to grow and as I allowed others to partake of that fruit, that all that was necessary for me to continue to exist, to continue to thrive, would be provided for me. And that's when, in that same scripture where Jesus talks about seeking first the kingdom, he says, take no thought, or do not worry about what you will eat, or what you will drink, or what you will wear, because God knows that you have need of these things. And if you seek first the kingdom, then these things will be provided. So today I just want to talk a little bit about that and how that works, because as we all are planted here by God, there is a purpose for us, and as we live that purpose, then we don't have to ask for anything. The Lord is our shepherd; we shall not want. We don't have to be concerned with it, because it'll already be provided. And so that's how I came to understand the mechanics of allowing the provision of God to work in our experience. And what also came to me was the story of the fig tree. Jesus was going into the city of Bethany, and he was hungry. So he saw this fig tree, and he walked over to the tree, but there were no figs on that tree. And when he saw that there were no figs on that tree, he told that tree that it would never bear fruit again. And while the disciples were amazed at the fact that the tree withered up so quickly, and it goes on to talk about the fact that when we ask believing that it'll be provided for us, there's another lesson that I got out of that. And that just as that fig tree was supposed to bear figs to feed Christ as he was walking through hungry that morning, we are to bear our fruit and give our service to our fellow man and nurture them and feed them so that they can go on and feel and come to understand their purpose Because as we live our purpose, we give other people permission to live theirs. So, you have to forgive me, I'm a little nervous, because as Reverend Farmer said, this is the first time that I am speaking in this capacity. But just like the orange tree in the example given by Joel Goldsmith, the fig tree had a purpose. And it was as if Jesus was telling that tree, if you aren't fulfilling your purpose, you have cut yourself off from the provision of God. And so I want to come here and talk about this so that we stop cutting ourselves off from the provision of God. So one of the first things that I do want to share is that we've been planted here by God. If you are here listening to the sound of my voice, you have a purpose. You are here for a reason. God put you here right now to do something that no one else can do. And just as a seed being planted into the ground, God planted you here on the earth, but also just as a seed, you first have to establish roots. You have to establish your understanding of God. And that is seeking first the kingdom. That establishes your roots. Like I said, one of the things that I realized as I noticed that this was the journey that I was to take, is that I needed to come into an understanding of who God is if I was going to trust God. And so that is establishing your roots, getting an understanding of not only who God is, but also who you are in God. And when you do that, as you do that, you also start to recognize how you are to express as God in the world. Because God wants to express through each one of us individually in a unique way. Like I said, in a way that no one else can. Because if somebody else could do it, there wouldn't be a need for you. But there is a need for you, and that's why you're here. But you have to establish the roots first. Because, many times we are reaching out to others and to things, and we look at money as supply. We look at the oranges as supply. We look at fruit and food as our supply. But God is our supply, and we miss that God is our supply because we're not rooted in God. And when we are rootless, then we become ruthless in our search for fulfillment. And a lot of what we see going on in the world today is the fact that people are missing being rooted and grounded in their faith, rooted and grounded in God, rooted and grounded in an understanding of who they are and who they are to express as. And because they are rootless, they become ruthless because they're still searching for that connection. And they think that they'll find it in their relationships, they think that they'll find it in their jobs, but that's not it. And it's not even, you don't even necessarily find it in your church. But your church also is a pathway to help you to understand where you do find that. And that's the blessing that we have being in a spiritual community such as this, that we can be led to an understanding of God and be rooted and grounded in Him so that we don't become ruthless in our search for fulfillment. We understand that our fulfillment flows through us to others, and not from others to us. And when you do that, you recognize that God has encoded our purpose within us, and it unfolds as we establish our roots. And just like a seed, an orange seed will produce an orange tree. A grape seed will produce a grapevine. You are a seed, and your purpose is exactly what God wants to produce through you to bless the world. So the question is, what are your gifts? What are your talents? I was just reading, actually just yesterday, in this book called What's Your Genius by Jay Niblick. Tony Robbins does the foreword, and he says in this, the secret to achieving and being fulfilled is having the courage to go beyond the skills you've learned and discover the gifts that you were born to give to and to employ them daily. So many people settle and adapt to the work or career they've chosen or fallen into. They might even say, well, obviously I've got to enjoy my work. I picked it, didn't I? While that may be true, the question is, did you pick it consciously? knowing what your gifts are, knowing what's inside of you that is most powerful. Again, I'm not referring to the part of you that's been educated and trained. We can all train ourselves to do just about anything. This is the part of you that you were born to use, to contribute, and to serve at a higher level. So what are your gifts? What are your talents? What are those things that as you move forward in them, they give you joy, they fill you with life? See, because what I have found in these few years is that our purpose is the life energy of God flowing through us. And as we are not living our purpose, we are squelching that life. We are it's like a faucet. You can either turn it on and have the water pouring through, or you can turn it down and nothing is flowing. The water is still there, but nothing is flowing through. And it's useless unless you turn on the tap and let the water flow. And just like that tree, that fig tree, was useless in the moment that Jesus needed it most, we want to make sure that we're not useless at the time that the people around us need us the most, when they have the most to gain from what we have to share with them. So what are your gifts? What are your talents? Do you teach? Do you speak? Do you sing? Do you write? Do you act? These are all ways. Do you garden? Do you cook? These are all ways that Spirit can express through you. And as you see some of the people who are living their dreams, as they are expressing themselves authentically, you can see the types of things that are happening in their lives. You can see some of the people who are on TVs with these cooking shows, and now we have these reality TV shows where people are, where they sing or where they fix houses or they do all these different things, but they recognize that this is something that I'm called to do, and it allows them to go to a whole other platform to share that gift, that experience with the world. And if you're ready to step into another experience, you step into the next level of your life, then you have to know what your gifts, what your talents are, what makes you filled with joy, filled with passion. Because your fruit is the expression of that gift. Me as a teacher, as a speaker, my fruit is the lesson or the wisdom that I might share. As a singer, it might be song. As a poet, you may write poems. But all these are ways that you are expressing the life that God placed within you, the passion, the purpose that God placed within you with those around you. And people are touched, people are blessed, people are lifted to higher levels, and people come in contact with the Spirit within them when you share the Spirit within you. And also, your fruit, your service, those things that you do, that you enjoy, they also have seeds. And so not only can that fruit be used by others to nourish them, to encourage them, to inspire them, to lift them to higher heights, and to shine a light within them and help them to see God within themselves, there's also seeds in that fruit that also go into the ground. They become your creations, that can become the businesses that you have in your heart, that can become the ministries that God has placed on your heart, that can become, the songs, that can become the outreaches, that can become the nonprofits, whatever it is. These are your seeds. These are the things that you can plant into the world and bless the world. The next thing I want to talk about is that this is what I came to understand, is that there came to be a point where I realized that I was in IT work because I liked helping people. And so I went with that for a while. I said, I'm just going to focus on helping people, and this is going to be good enough. But I also recognized that I was becoming dissatisfied with that level of service. So even though I was producing some fruit, it just didn't seem like it was enough. And just like plants, when they're in too small a pot, they not only cease to grow, they cease to blossom, but they also start to die. When you are experiencing dissatisfaction with where you are in your life, you are attempting to fit too big a purpose into too small a life. And you are cutting off the flow of God through you. So it is on you to allow yourself to expand, to allow yourself to grow, to allow the seeds that come from your fruit to be planted so that you can nurture them and grow them into the businesses that allow you to reach further and touch more people, that grow you to the place where you might, be on TV or have, like now I do this radio show that I never thought that would be something that I would do. Now I'm standing here in front of you and I'm sharing this message, and that's something that, that a few years ago I may not have really thought about, or that, I probably would have ran away from it if I did think about it. But what I had to do in order to continue to allow the life energy and the prosperity of God to flow into and through my life is I had to allow myself to expand. I had to open myself up to a larger realm of life. I had to allow God to plant me in a larger pot. And and so we may be in places in our lives where you say, well, I am doing work. I am doing something that's good and it's helping people. But you're still feeling a little bit dissatisfied, or you're in a job and you have come to the end of it. And there are a lot of people that's going through that right now, where they are losing their jobs and they're blaming it on other people firing them, or they're blaming it on the economy. But the real reason is that they are trying to fit too big of a purpose into too small of a life. And it gets to a point where God says, I'm not allowing you to stay there. Now, you can cut off the energy, but I'm not going to allow you to stay in some place that not only no longer serves you, but no longer serves the community around you that I placed you here to serve. So we have to be willing to grow. We have to be willing to be put in larger situations. So if you are experiencing that, and you probably know what it is that you should be moving into doing, if you are experiencing hesitation, that's your sign that that's your direction to go in. In one of the conversations that I had with Reverend Farmer many years ago, when he was more my mentor than my friend, we were talking about something, and he said, are you afraid of it? I said, yeah. He said, then that's probably what you should do. If you are experiencing that hesitation, there is something in you that says, no, I'm not big enough to handle that. And what God is saying is that, no, I've already created the space for you. Your spirit is big enough now. You've already learned the lessons that you need to take into this next level of your life. All you have to do is step into it, and what I will provide. So again, we don't have to worry about those things we don't have to worry about what we're going to eat or where the money is going to come from, because being planted by God, we always know that just like trees are nourished by the ground, are nourished by the air, are nourished by sunlight, God is our nourishment, and will always give us those things that we need when we seek first the kingdom, when we're rooted and when we are living our purpose. And then the last thing that I want to share is just coming to an understanding that you are enough because God is enough. And because God is enough, there is enough for everyone. There is this thought sometimes that if we get too much of something, if we get too much of the pie, we are making the pie smaller for everybody else. But it's amazing how God cooks, because for some reason when we take a slice of the pie, it seems to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And just like the fish and loaves, just like the fish and loaves, all you have to do is bless it. When you give it, when you share it, when you just give what it is you have to give, then God multiplies it and uses it to touch multitudes of people. And so when you recognize that that is happening, and that's what I came to understand when I stepped out of the job that I had. I realized, well, wait a minute. I was, last year at this time, I was just working this job. I was doing this online blog talk radio show, but it was reaching a few people, but it wasn't going very far. Now all of a sudden I'm on Unity FM, and there are millions of people worldwide that have access to what I'm talking about each and every week. I'm able to stand in front of you and a lot of you I don't even know, and I'm able to share this because I have realized that I'm enough. And actually, even this morning, as I was going through my notes and I was trying to get everything together, and I wanted to make sure that everything was just perfect, I got to a point where I had to stop myself, take a deep breath, and remind myself, I am enough. And that what I have to share, just my willingness to get up here and share it, would be multiplied to bless not only you, but the people that you will touch when you leave here, and the people that they will touch when they leave your presence, and on and on and on. Like a ripple on a pond, it'll just keep growing, keep expanding, keep touching, and keep blessing. And so I just want to encourage you all today that whatever it is on your heart, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something like I did and step out and leave whatever job that you have right now. That's my story. But that doesn't have to be yours, because you may not be there yet. Because when I wasn't there, I just accepted where I was. And like I said, I realized that when I was working in IT, that what I enjoyed about it was helping folks. So I started where I was to live my purpose, which was to help others. So then I was able to even find joy in a job that I didn't really care for anymore. But I also recognized that with that, I was still going to need to allow myself to grow and to allow myself to have more and more of God revealed to me. So, these aren't steps that you do once and you're open, and it's done. As you continue to grow, as you continue to expand, your roots have to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in God. You have to know that God is the source of everything you are and will carry you through every situation that you are in. So, and just as a reminder, for a moment, if you are resisting, as some people do, as I did it once, if you are resisting that calling that you have on your life, for a moment, Jesus resisted his. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when he said, Lord, take this cup away from me. I cannot believe you asked me to do this. So please, can you find it in your infinite wisdom to not make me have to go through this? He had that moment where he said, this is too much for me. I'm not big enough. And look at how much he's grown. And all these years later, we still look to him for guidance. We still look to him as a light on our path. And he exhorted us before he ascended into heaven to do greater things than him. So remember that as you are living your purpose, you are allowing God to provide everything that you need for you. So you don't have to take thought in what God is. You don't have to take thought in all the things that God is working out for you. Why try to figure all that out? God's already worked that out. All you have to do is focus on what you are here to do. Because you are here for a purpose. You are here on purpose. And God is waiting for you to accept that purpose so that he can bless you in ways you have never imagined. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
For someone who says that this is the first time they have spoken in this capacity,